Now, let me ask you a question. How many of you guys have ever passed on exploring a role because you knew that someone was going to ask for references and you couldn't provide them because your current employer didn't know you were searching? So, Savannah, so talk to us about it, Savannah.
It was, so this was actually like a job hugging example for me. I was
Okay.
definitely job hugging this role for about 2.5 years, longer than I should have. But I definitely, at the time I was like, well, before I had that role, I was previously a nanny and a babysitter, and I had all these jobs that weren't like quote unquote like big girl jobs, at the time. So my first job that I had was at that place, and I remember being like, well, I can't like put my mom and stuff down as my references. So it was a little bit difficult, but I was able to get one reference from a manager, but it was, you did kind of have to keep it really hush hush because, things can go around. But yeah,
Mm-hmm.
definitely.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think that's the biggest, and we get that too, don't we? And Savannah, I know that you're on the back end of preparing resumes and the submission packets to the clients, and so you can probably attest to this as well. Sometimes it's really hard to come up with references if you're gainfully employed and you don't want your current employer to know you're looking.
Hmm.
And same thing with interviews. I mean, it's really sometimes it can be hard to look for a job while you have a job. So, two things that I would tell you, and I love that you were able to come up with someone. Sometimes you guys, you can't. Sometimes you just can't. But a really good company will be okay with that. If you're being transparent and you just say, I'm not going to be able to provide references from my current position because they don't know I'm looking, but I'll be glad to provide them once I get a written offer. I'd be okay with that answer. And if you're dealing with a company that isn't okay with that answer, it's not a company culture that you probably want to work with. Okay. It's a reasonable statement. I'm currently conducting a confidential search. I can give you references from previous positions, but my current employer does not know I'm looking, but I can provide those references whenever I receive a written offer. Boom. There you go. It will sidestep any reference question that you ever have whenever you're trying to conduct a confidential search. And I've never seen it fail, at least not with our firm. Companies are usually okay with that if they're hiring someone for a permanent position. So just kind of keep that in mind. Okay. Now, for interviews, always, 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 always schedule them outside working hours. I see this too. I'll have a CRA that's on a site doing a site visit and they want to take the interview from the site visit. I'm like, what? Did you fall and bump your head? No, you're not doing that. Take a lunch break and go back to the hotel, right? Or do it after hours or before hours or something else. You want to make sure you're separating those situations. It's an ethics thing too, because even if you can get by with taking that interview from work, do you really want your future hiring manager to know that you're getting paid from your current employer while you're interviewing with them? I wouldn't be okay with that. So you're going to want to make sure you're trying to schedule them either outside of working orders during a genuine lunch break, not from your car, but from a controlled environment, somewhere that you can go to that's controlled. Okay. And use a neutral background. The other thing that I would say too is neutrality all around. We get these candidates that will send us resumes that are on their company's letterhead. You guys don't do that, right? You're in charge of your career. Make sure your resume is your brand. Same thing with your background. It's a lot better to have a blank background like I've got than to have a company's background whenever you're trying to leave that company. So just little things like that that really matter. And whenever you need to block your calendar on your company's calendar, use a generic calendar label, right? And if you do go in-house, then make sure if you've got to go and do an in-person interview, watch how you dress, right? You don't want to dress all of a sudden you're in a dress or a dress like a suit whenever you normally wear jeans and a polo shirt, right? So just little things like that, you want to make sure that you're not giving those signals for. Okay. So just making sure that all of these things kind of are in place. One more thing on references, Savannah, you had said that you were able to find a reference. If you know that you're going to start looking, come up with a reference bench of people. Like, let's say, for example, that you were with a CRO for 5, 6 years. Well, there's going to be people that provided you work direction across those 5 or 6 years that have left that company. Reach out to them and tell them what's going on. Tell them it's confidential and ask them if they'd serve as a reference for you. So there are other things that you can do as well that might be able to help you bridge that gap. Okay. So any,
Angela,
yes,
do they really ask for references anymore? The last two interviews I went on, the last two jobs I had, they never asked for references. They just interviewed me and then I was hired. But was it because like I knew other people at the job site, or like
probably.
they never asked me for like normally I had like three or four references on a sheet of paper, and they would ask me if they could call them or email them, and I would give them the sheet. But the last job that I had and I interviewed for, they never asked for a list of references. And I thought it was kind of odd,
Well, if they
but
knew, yeah, if they knew you, somebody
yeah.
in the company knew you, that would be a buy.
Well, yeah, it was the recruiter. I've known him for 20 years. So when he interviewed
Maybe.
me, he already knew me. So,
So I will tell you that we have clients and I've coached clients that have said that they think references are a waste of time because people always provide people that are going to speak highly of them. I will tell you that 44% of the applicants that get to our reference stage fall out.
oh, all
44%.
right.
And a lot of it is because, believe it or not, people really do a terrible job self-assessing. They'll provide references that don't give them good references, or they'll
Mhm.
fake references or whatever. We check everyone's references before we even decide to represent you. And a good recruiting agency will do that. And our clients, when we submit you to our clients, they don't check your references because we've already done it. And so there is sometimes that level of comfort. But in today's market, where 60% of candidates have falsified all or part of their credentials, and another 20% of the applicants aren't even real people, it is a
Oh, wow.
flawed approach if a company doesn't check your references. Hugely flawed. Hugely flawed.
Okay.
So I would expect people to check your references. Um, and if you,
Okay. I mean, I didn't
yeah.
provide any references, but
Hmm.
the last job I had, the people I knew the HR recruiter for 20 years, so he hired me.
Hmm.
I when I interviewed, I got the job, but I also knew like 10 people
That's why
that
they
I
knew
had
you were a real
worked with.
person. Hmm.
Yeah, right. So they knew I was a real person. So there were so many people that already were working for this particular company, and that I didn't Jim never asked for any references, only because I knew Laura, I knew Rosalie, I knew so many
Sure.
people that already worked there. So he probably didn't have to ask too many people who I
Yeah.
was and the kind of work I did.
So they
So
did
that's
some
why
back.
I was so
Yeah.
surprised that he
Hmm.
didn't ask for references. But then
Sure.
I realized, oh my God, half the people I worked with in the past are there at this company. So
Yeah. Yeah.
that's
Yeah.
probably what
Well,
happened.
but now you've just made the case for networking again, though, right? And as we talk about the fact that um,
Right,
the
right,
application button is broken, it's really about who knows you or who
right.
knows of you, and that does make a big difference. But that's also why the references feed in today's market because you need to have people that are reputable that can speak on your behalf. But not being able to provide references because you're conducting a confidential search shouldn't stop you because, like we talked about, really a company whose culture is understanding will understand that I'll provide references from my current position at the offer stage because my current company doesn't know that I'm searching, right? So just being able to kind of sidestep that, and again next week when we start talking about the ghost in the pool and how you guys as job seekers are competing with AI candidates, we'll talk a little bit about how you can set up signals in your resume and on your LinkedIn profile that show that you're real. And so that'll help too, because then this answer of I can't provide references because I'm conducting a confidential search will land a little bit better if you really get to that point and saying, once I get a written offer letter, I'll be glad to provide them, but right now my company doesn't know I'm searching. And so you're not saying you're not going to provide them, you're just saying that you'll have to wait. Okay.